thank you for hanging with me. I know you probably feel like, I've been drinking from a fire hose all day long, and this is the last presentation. It's on a Friday. You're thinking it's also just about happy hour time. So we will hopefully have fun. This will be very, very interactive. If I were to just stand up here and speak for an hour and 15 minutes, you guys would be, and I'd have to wake you up and say it's time to be, for the presentation to be over. So today we're going to talk about growth mindset. And I think, as I mentioned in the promotional video, you probably have one of the most challenging jobs in an organization. And I'm sure you're like, yeah, absolutely. You have to be technically proficient, but you also have to have very good leadership skills. And so today we're going to talk about those leadership skills. We're going to talk about how to develop them, and you'll have some opportunities to actually develop a plan on growth mindset. I know some of you may have already been to a presentation on growth mindset. If you're here again, thank you very much for coming, and hopefully you can learn some additional things from the other presentation that I know was fabulous. This is just the PMI triangle, and I wanted to address a little bit about how growth mindset will help you. In the technical project management, one of the things that growth mindset will do is it will give you the opportunity to think about how to embrace new technologies, because growth mindset is all about learning and growth and development. In the strategic and business management, it will give you an opportunity to think about innovation and how to move forward and how to really use those mistakes that you make to learn from and to increase your ability to get better than your competition. And finally, in leadership, and I can promise you, because I read the growth mindset research, I am a college professor, and I read the research, and I can tell you that growth mindset leaders actually not only retain better talent, but they are able to keep talent. And I know that keeping talent, yes, you're nodding, keeping talent is hard, right? I mean, it really is. Attracting it is hard. It's very, very, very expensive. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask a couple of volunteers to come up here first. Anyone? 2 volunteers? 2? I'm not going to hurt you. Come on up. I don't bite. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And while my volunteers are up here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I learned about growth mindset. And well, you can. I tell you what, you can stand up here and you can watch them and make sure they behave. How about that? Yeah. So growth mindset was discovered sort of by accident by researcher Carol Dweck. She was at Columbia University, I believe at the time, and she was looking at low-performing schools. And she said, even in low-performing schools, some students do really well. What's the difference? They weren't smarter, they weren't better looking, they weren't more athletic, but some students did well, even in a low-performing and a disadvantaged school. What could be the difference? And so she started looking at this, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea about how she discovered growth mindset and fixed mindset. So if you will come over here, and you can just come on this side of me. Oh, sorry. All right. So, and tell me your name.
I'm Tina.
Tina?
And I'm Michelle.
Michelle, okay. So Tina is my student A, right? And Michelle is my student B. So I have in my hands, pretend, that I have math problems. They're the exact same math problems that I have in both hands. And I'm going to have each student solve the math problems. So to Tina, I say, here's these math problems, and the way that you solve them will help you get better at solving math problems. To Michelle, I say, here are some math problems to solve. The way you solve them will tell us how smart you are. So who do you think will attempt to solve more problems?
I'm going to go with me.
I'm smart.
She will attempt to solve more problems. Who will solve more problems correctly? Who is more likely to cheat?
I got it right.
I have, by very, very simple sentences, I have primed Tina for a growth mindset, and I have primed Michelle for a fixed mindset. And they are probably both the most lovely people that you could ever imagine. And I do have a little prize for you. And I'll tell you what to do with these at the end of the presentation. Let's give them a hand. Thank you. Okay. Oh. Well, there we go. All right. So I also have some mindset questions. And the first one is, are people unable to change due to a more or less fixed quota of abilities? Who has a thought about that?
People can always change.
What?
People can always change.
All right, very good. All right, is it true that no matter how much you learn, you really can't change your intelligence? Who said that? Somebody over here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Well, thank you. I'm actually pretty good because I do ride in a Mardi Gras float, so I feel. Can people work to improve their intelligence? Yes. Okay. Yep. All right. Here you go. Incoming. Yay. All right. Can you always improve your intelligence, no matter how intelligent you are? Yes. Yes, ma'am. All right. And is there not much that can be done to change the kind of person you are? What? What'd you think? Anyone can change. That is right. That is what we know, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. All right. Very nice. You guys did a good job with the questions. I think another round of applause. Now, growth mindset is going to be really important for you if you're a peer, but it is going to be especially important if you are a leader. And I'm going to tell you a little story because actually I teach an entire class on the neuropsychology of leadership. So I teach an entire class in our graduate program on how cognitive neuroscience is influencing the way that we think about how leaders interact with their team members. And this comes from one of the neuroscience books that I have read in preparation for my classes. And so everyone is looking at the leader, and this story, I think, really exemplifies that. So Linda Hudson was the first president of General Dynamics, the first female president, not the first president, the first female president of General Dynamics. This was way back in the early 2000s. And so she said, she was so excited, and she wanted to dress professionally, and of course, this is when ladies, we wore those suits every day, right? So she went to Nordstrom, and she was fitted with different suits, and she said that the lady at Nordstrom showed her how to tie a scarf. And it was this very circuitous, kind of complicated way to tie a scarf. So, of course, the next day, she wears her suit, off the rack, on your back. So she wears the suit, and she ties the scarf in that way. The day after that, she said that she went back to work, and there were no fewer than a dozen women who were wearing suits and had scarves tied exactly like hers. She said, you know what? I realized that people were not just watching what I wore, but they were watching everything that I do. And as we're going to talk about this later, growth mindset is one of those things that has cascading effects. So as does fixed mindset, the opposite. So you can actually create a team with growth mindset, or you can create a team with fixed mindset, because everybody is watching. Make sense? Thank you, but you can hold that, you can hold it. All right, so everybody is looking at the leader. And these are just some of the companies that are using growth mindset. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Microsoft, because Microsoft has included growth mindset in their entire performance management process, which I think is really brilliant. And of course, why are they doing it? Because they want innovation. They want creativity. They are in that business. I mean, we all are in that business right now, right? But especially somebody like Microsoft. And for example, they have performance conversations, and I don't know about you, if you've ever had to have a performance management conversation, with an employee, it's miserable, you don't like it as the manager, the employee doesn't like it as the employee. But what they do is, they have 3 questions. They say, what's going well? What's not going well? What are you struggling with? And how can I help? And that is a wonderful thing and a wonderful way to engage employees. So what is mindset? And we talk about mindset. Mindset is one of those words that we use for lots of different things. But in this particular instance, we are talking about mindset as the beliefs at how much our skills and abilities can improve over time. And a growth mindset says we can have, and we do believe that our skills and abilities can grow over time. We can do it. And the research really says we can. Our brains are so much more plastic than we think that they are. It is amazing. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. A fixed mindset says, no, you are who you are. Now, that being said, I do want to mention that fixed and growth mindsets are domain specific. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you might have a growth mindset in one area, but you might have a fixed mindset in the other area. And you might have a fixed mindset in an area that doesn't really matter for your career. And I'll give you an example. My daughter has a classically trained mezzo-soprano voice. Beautiful. My daughter-in-law has a beautiful classically trained soprano voice. My son sings in a band. Mom can't carry a tune in a bucket. Now, all of my family says, oh, Mom, it's just a matter of taking voice lessons. I'm sure you could sing better. And I'm like, no, if I got kidnapped and the kidnapper said, Suzette, either you sing on key or I will kill you, I would say, kill me now and save you some time and me some embarrassment. So I do have a very fixed mindset when it comes to that. However, it hasn't really affected my career because I am not part of any choirs. No one has asked me, oh, Suzette, please sing with us. So, it's been okay. So, fixed versus growth mindset. Fixed mindset really sees these things, these challenges that come up, they see them as threats. When you have a growth mindset, you think about it as a challenge and an opportunity. I have a question for you. Where do you think our brains lie in when we see something that is difficult to think about it as a threat or an opportunity? Do you think it's more likely we see it as a threat, or it's more likely we see it as an opportunity? Wow, that's great. You're exactly right. Anybody want to say why? What? Survival, yes. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
If you look at things as threatening, then you're more likely to survive as an organism.
and pass your genetic material to other people. Yes, and you know what? That is so important to recommend, to realize, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to work harder, right, to do the growth mindset. It's going to take a little bit more effort, but that's okay too. And I'm going to show you some ways to kind of make that a little bit better and easier. Growth, and I have to say, I love that brain, that revolving brain. That is my favorite. That is my favorite thing, my favorite animation to put in presentations. I try to work it into every presentation I have. But yes, ability, creativity, intelligence, all of those things can be improved. And I think, one of the things, and I know this was for me when I was growing up, you took a Stanford Binet intelligence test. Anybody take that? Anybody remember? Yes. Stanford Binet intelligence test. And once you took that intelligence test, it was supposed to be, oh yes, you have this IQ and you'll have it forever. What people really don't know is that Alfred Binet of the Stanford Binet intelligence test actually didn't develop the test to measure a static measure. He developed the test to see how much better people got. He was working with developmentally disabled children, how much better they got after intervention. So that's not, if you think, oh gosh, my IQ is average, I guess I'll never be any better. Not true. And besides which, cognitive intelligence is just one of the many intelligences. So even if you don't improve there, you're still probably really bright. But it's important to think about those kinds of things. So what is growth mindset? It's the idea that you embrace the challenges. Obstacles are a way to grow. And I can promise you there is a huge body of research that tells us if we do not challenge our brains, what happens? What? Who said atrophy?
I already have.
Oh, you already have brain. No, you can't have two. What? Okay. Actually, everybody's going to get a brain. But who else? Oh, sorry. Oh, my aim is really off. I should have practiced before I came. So intelligence, ability absolutely can be developed. I mean, it is unbelievable. I've watched videos and in real time of the way that when people are learning, these new synapses form in your brain, so new connections form in your brain. And actually that's happening all the time anyway. So it's your choice as to whether you can be making good connections or you're making poor connections. So you choose that depending on what you pay attention to, because we cannot pay attention to everything. And this is in opposition to this idea of fixed mindset. See, effort is useless, and I think one of the interesting things about fixed and growth mindset is the idea of you're happy, if you have a growth mindset, you're happy to see other people doing well, right? Because you don't see success as this small pie, and if you get a large piece of it, then there's less of it for me. You see success as something else, as something that is exponentially large. We can all be successful, but I know that we have all worked for organizations, or we've all worked with people who really had that fixed mindset, right? I mean, yes. Oh, I'll ask you to talk about that in a little bit. Yes. But I mean, it is so difficult to work with these people. I don't need to learn. I don't need to do. I worked with a corporate client recently, and I really emphasized as part of the training, and I really emphasized, I actually had them do very specific plans because he had employees like that. Employees who worked for many years doing the same things, Gosh, I've always done it this way. Why would I want to do anything else? If it's not broken, why do we want to fix it? And that attitude simply is so destructive in today's workforce, right? I mean, we have to be breaking things all the time and fixing them. We have to be breaking them and figuring out new ways to fix them. So, what is mindset influence? Mindset influences what we pay attention to, how our brain handles errors and mistakes, and how we interpret our successes and failures. So, for example, did anyone notice that clock in the back of the room when you walked in? No, you didn't. You didn't. There's a lot of other things to pay attention to here, right? So you didn't notice that clock. Our brains can't process everything. Our brains can't process everything, and they are prediction machines. So there's some research now that says we really don't see reality as it is. We are always predicting a nanosecond ahead of us. And so we are seeing what our brains have expected to see. And that is a pretty powerful thing, right? Because we can influence what our brains expect to see. And so how our brains think about errors and mistakes. Does the mistake say, oh God, I'm a real loser? Do you say, boy, I'm a real loser, I'm really stupid, and I can't do anything? Or are you thinking, how am I going to learn from this mistake? What can I do better? And that's the idea. And then finally, how we interpret our successes and failures. And I included this slide when I was doing some growth mindset presentations, and I also teach this in my classes. And I had a student who raised his hand and he said, well, so does it mean that we allow slackers, that we don't have goals, that we do all these kinds of things? That's not growth mindset. We don't want to be fixed mindset. It's like, wow, that's the worst thing ever. No, that's not it. The idea is that you learn from your mistakes, but you don't let them happen over and over and over again. And especially the stupid mistakes, right? There is a difference between, and Amy Edmondson talks about that in her book, The Right Kind of Wrong. She talks about mistakes that are learning mistakes, learning opportunities that are the result of trying to experiment and do new things, where, you also have mistakes where people did something stupid that they shouldn't have done. But either of those mistakes, you really use them as learning opportunities. And it's important to understand struggle. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And to really say it's okay. It's okay to struggle. That's not an issue. And it's really focused on learning. And I don't know how many of you, and I hope we hear from you when we talk about this, but are in organizations that encourage that learning, encourage that development. That is such an important part of growth mindset. We want to help people, and truly the new generations that are entering the workforce really, really want, and raise your hand if you've just entered the workforce. Anybody? Yeah. And what do you want? You want learning? You want development? Yeah. You want to learn to get better. And then that's really important. I think everybody always wanted to do that, but you guys are the first ones who are bold enough to talk about it, right? So, what I'd like for you to do now is I'd like for you to turn to the person next to you and discuss an example of fixed mindset, except for you. You can't. You have the queen chair. Oh, wait, you can talk to him. You can talk to this guy. So I want you to turn to the person sort of next to you. And I want you to discuss, where have you seen fixed mindset? Where have you seen growth mindset? Talk about an example and decide which one you'd like to share, because we're going to share those experiences. So I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. Wow, you guys are good. You came back right. Sometimes Sometimes groups are like, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I would like for anyone, just make sure that your partner's okay with that, to share your experiences of growth and fixed mindset, and especially the outcomes. If you will raise your hands, we have people who have microphones and we want to get that recorded. So if you'll raise your hands, then we can get, they're very fast movers, but not at the speed of light. So it'll take them a little bit of time. So, okay.
We had a group, we had to make some changes on a project because it was not working right. So what I did, I had a team meeting, and first I really planned this, and I decided on 3 things that would make their life better by implementing this new change. And so we had a team meeting, and I talked to them about it. They were a little reluctant at first, but as we went through it after another week and we talked about what it already had changed for them, they began to buy in, and as a result, they began to make a change to accepting the new change that we needed.
And what was the outcome?
The outcome that we got it, put it in, implemented it, and everybody was happy when they got through because it really was, what's in it for me? I showed them what it was in for me.
Okay, very good. And do you have an example? Does your group have an example of a fixed mindset?
Sure, yeah. Many moons ago at our company, we attempted to implement a certain software. There was not buy-in from, there was 2 core stakeholder groups. One there was buy-in from, one there was not. Long story short, lots of trauma later and millions of dollars. We only implemented half of the solution. We abandoned the other half because they were just not willing to come to the table and look at a different way of working. And we since do not have that software at all.
Oh,
it's very painful.
Excellent examples. Excellent examples. Thank you. Excellent examples. Thank you. Of fixed and growth mindset. You know.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that it demonstrates is that this is not just some kind of, people always go, oh, Suzette, you talk about soft skills. They have real life bottom line implications. And I think your example really was very powerful. Who else? Back here.
Thank you. This is a very brave move, but here goes. I'm going to share a fixed mindset example from personal life. So I'm a physician by training. I practiced in India, and I moved here to the United States about 10 years ago. And I moved here with a very fixed mindset of what kind of job I wanted to do or work I wanted to do. And I was like, I'm a clinician. I want to do work that is commensurate to my degree or my education or my experience. And I was not getting any roles. And until I shifted from that fixed mindset to saying new opportunities would mean new learning and growth, the outcome was that I wasted several years not having work to do, but taking a big hit on my mental health too because of not having that work. So that's fixed mindset example.
And are you growth mindset now? Are you?
I would say so in some areas, yes.
So you're working on it?
I'm working on it.
Okay, good. We're all works in progress. All right, here. Got it? Oh, thank you. All right, any other examples?
I have an example, a personal one that is fixed and mindset in the same conversation. So it is related to my partner and I in our parenting. Often we're saying the exact same thing, but the language that we use elicits either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So if we're talking to our children about preparing for an exam, and I say to our daughter, study what you can, go in there, write what you remember. It's not an assessment of how smart you are. It's what you were able to retain. And then my partner may say, well, but you need to do well on the test. because they do matter, right? And they do when you're, in grade school and those kind of things. So it's then what came up in our group was around how anxiety can be brought up by the language that we use and how we can create mindsets in other people by the language that we choose.
Yeah, I think you make such an interesting point about language and words. Here. Oh, I do need to practice. So you make an important point. Did you get it? Okay. You make an important point about language. As we started off, all Carol did was prime these with one sentence. And so words have very significant implications. It really matters how you talk to people. And as you talked about, you don't want to, yes, it is important to do well, but it is that journey of learning that is what you want to make sure that you reinforce. So really nice parenting job. Parenting's hard, yeah, but it is. That's very good. All right. So what happens then in fixed and growth mindset organizations, and how do they happen? Growth mindset, fixed mindset organization happen. How do you suspect it happens? How does a whole organization have a fixed or growth mindset? Who said culture? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Good catch. Finally, I have a throw and somebody could kind of catch it. It wasn't too far away from them. All right. Yeah. So actually the culture, the leadership who creates the culture, and you can have an organization. And, if I was going to ask you who worked for a fixed mindset organization, I have. I've worked for a growth mindset organization. Years ago, I worked for an entrepreneur who told me, he goes, Suzette, take chances, do anything you want. And I did, and I loved it. It was really fun. Every day was different. I had an exciting job. And this was years ago, but about 10 years ago, he sold his company, his privately held company, for $500 million. So growth mindset worked really well for Bob. And I've also worked for a fixed mindset company that is not around anymore. Yeah, my boss once told me, because I like to include, cognitive neuroscience research. People normally love to know what's going on in their brains. And he said, oh, Suzette, don't talk about that neuroscience. People don't like that. They don't want to know about that. They don't want to learn about that. And of course, I did not work there very long after that, and the company is no longer there. So in growth mindset organizations, you have this high trust, strong sense of ownership, supports risk-taking. In fixed mindset organizations, low trust, no ownership, and no innovation. And I want to give you an example of an organization that is, of course, it's the poster child for bad organizational behavior, right? Enron. But Carol Dweck uses this in her book. And what she says is that when Enron hired people, they said, we're hiring you because you're the smartest person that we've interviewed. Not you're the hardest worker, not you're the most innovative worker. You're the smartest person. So can people make mistakes? Oh, yeah, they can, but they're going to cover them up. And she says that's one of the things that happened at Enron. So I was talking to a group like this, and I said, oh, yeah, and Carol Dweck said, and somebody in the back raised his hand, and he goes, that's correct. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad it's correct, because Carol says it in her book, but I didn't really know. And he said, no. He said, I was a consultant for Enron. And he said, I sat with the executive leadership team, and they told me, we hire the smartest people that we can, and we tell them that we hired them because they're so smart. So they did not want to make mistakes. They cut corners. They lied. They did not share information. And then what happened? You know, we all know the sad story and the sad ending of Enron. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about in terms of growth mindset. The first one is the power of yet. And you're nodding the idea of not being able to do it yet. You know, I guess if I had a growth mindset with singing, I would say I can't carry a tune yet. I haven't really gone there yet. But, you know, I could. But it's not, you know, in your professional life, even in your personal life, your things that you want to do, the things that you want to get better at. I'm not there, but I will get there. I'm not there yet. And this is not only important for us to think about for ourselves, but it is hugely important for us to role model. And to our wonderful participant up here, tell me your name. Janita, who was willing to share her personal experiences parenting her children. That's one of the things, you know, you may not have mastered those math problems yet, but you can do it if you practice all the time. The other one is, and this is hard for us, right? Growth is a struggle, but that's okay. Growth is a struggle, but that's okay. Why is it so hard to grow and to really have the struggles? Why is that difficult?
Because it's uncomfortable, yes.
It is uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable. And who said that?
Christina.
Ah. Golden brain. All right, finally, yes. All right. But growth is a struggle, and I'm going to tell you kind of the neuroscience reason why, because I think this is a really interesting thing. And when you know why, it kind of helps you to get past it. So our brains are about 3% of our body weight, but they use 20% of our metabolic energy. That being said, I've often thought, can I just think harder and lose weight? And I was talking to a neuroscientist friend. She goes, that's not the way it works. And I thought, well, that's not very fair. But anyway, so our brains were developed because for millennia, our distant ancestors didn't have enough calories, right? And our brains need a lot of calories. So our brains really developed this idea of, okay, if you have a habit, if you do it the same thing over and over again, even if it's not helpful, if you have this habit, it actually is less metabolically intensive. It uses less energy. Growth struggles require more metabolic energy. So your brain is kind of fighting you on it. So that's why you have to be very mindful. And we're going to talk about how you can do if-then plans and kind of fool your brain on that. The other thing is, and I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, mindsets are contagious. And this is just something that I copied from one of the studies that recently talked about it. But if you exhibit a growth mindset at stage 1, time 1, then more of your team members will exhibit a growth mindset at time 2. So it is an absolutely, and sadly enough, fixed mindsets are contagious too. So, but if you exhibit that growth mindset, other people will exhibit it. They'll begin to see your successes. They'll begin to see a much more pleasant workplace. They'll begin to see those opportunities for training and development and how people are getting smarter and better. Now, I have a couple of quotes from people who have had, who demonstrate the idea of growth mindset. Can somebody read the first quote for me? No, don't say. Don't. Just read.
I've missed more than 9 passing shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games 26 times. I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I've failed over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed.
Who is it? You are right. Do you have a golden brain?
Shop in Fort Worth who has that randomly printed on a freezer, and it's the other
On a freezer. Oh, that's kind of inspirational. You know, you see it every time you get eyes. Oh, you have a brain. Okay. All right. Oh, well, I sorry. All right. So, who can read the next quote for me? All right. Thank you.
We sat around the dinner table and he asked, "What did you guys fail at this week?" If we had nothing to tell him, he'd be disappointed. He knew that many people become paralyzed because of the fear of failure. My father wanted us to try everything and feel free to push the envelope.
All right. And as you know, because I pressed this, Sarah Blakely. Does anybody know who Sarah Blakely is? Founder of Spanx, and God bless her. Right? I mean, is there anybody in this room who is not thankful for Spanx? Oh, fear of failure is paralyzing. It is paralyzing. So how do you do growth mindset? You want to value progress. You know, a lot of times all we do is we tell people, oh, good job after the job is over. But we value progress, value those incremental milestones that people are reaching. Oh, I see you've done this part of, you finished this part of the job. That's great. What can I help you with? What are you still struggling with? And the interesting thing is, experiment and learn from others. Organizations that have embraced growth mindset, some of the leaders publish in their employee newsletters their mistake of the week. Now that takes a lot of gumption for a leader to admit that, right? This is my mistake of the week, and this is what I learned about it. But when you do that, what happens? Everybody's learning. Everybody's not afraid to make mistakes. Yes, of course. Of course. So that's the idea. You want to experiment, and you want to learn from others. The fact is that in my classes, there's lots of peer learning because the research is telling us that learning from other people is much, much, much more powerful than listening to me up here, blah, 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 blah. You know, so that's one of the reasons that you guys, I build that into all the presentations, that you do get a chance to learn and talk to other people. Our brains are very much wired for socialization. Even if you're an introvert and you say, oh no, I'm not a social, you still cannot live without other people and that interaction. That is really, really important. And in your team, you want to model the way. I have one habit at a time. Anybody can guess why I have one habit at a time? Who said it's hard? Yes, yes. Oh, you already have golden brain, right? So it is hard, yes.
I've heard it take 21 days.
Yeah, and some, there is some information on that. It kind of depends on the habit, depends on the situation, depends on how you use it. I mean, it can take up to 6 months. But the thing is that's the way our brains work. A lot of people, and I see this, in fact, I just graded some papers from a class that I was teaching this spring. And I had students who said, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do that. And I went, pick one. Pick one and think about when you're going to do it. And what are the benefits that you think will accrue? Once it becomes a habit, Then you can do another one. But it is way too overwhelming for our brains to do a lot of different things. So you pick one habit at a time in social settings, and you make it as simple as you possibly can. This is something that I do want to kind of finish up as we're closing up, is don't weaponize growth mindset. What do I mean by that? Don't force it. Don't make comparisons. Right, those are not growth mindset things. And I have to tell you, when I first learned growth mindset, I was so guilty of this. I was like, that wasn't growth mindset. I felt very superior. And I was like, I can't believe you're saying that. That's so not growth mindset. And so you have to think about that. And what you want to do is, rather than criticize, you want to help people along, because that is a much more growth mindset practice. So now I want you to work your brain. I want you to discuss and think about how you will utilize one growth mindset behavior, just one. I want you to discuss it with the person next to you. I want you to modify it if they say, oh, maybe you should do this instead. And then I want you to be willing to share it with the group. And I want you to use what's called an if-then plan. What is an if-then plan? An if-then plan says, if this happens, then I will do it. And I just want to read just a little couple of sentences from, and this is a book by Heidi Grant Halverson. Heidi Grant Halverson is a cognitive neuroscientist. She studied under Carol Dweck at Columbia. She was head of the Leadership Center at Harvard. She was leader of the Leadership Center at the Neuroleadership Institute as well. And she wrote this book called 9 Things Successful People Do Differently, all based on cognitive neuroscience. So it's a translation. It's a little book. I recommend it to everybody. But what she says in here about if-then plans, she says it is a powerful way to help you achieve any goal. Well over 100 studies on everything from diet and exercise to negotiation and time management have shown that deciding in advance where and when you will take specific actions to reach your goal can double or triple your chances for success. Very simple, but can triple your chances for success. So when you're thinking about it, think, it may be if I am given this project to work on, then I will assign it to different people who I want them to learn. And I will do frequent check-ins and help them to succeed. So, it might be something as simple as that. But think about it. Think about how you will do it. It may be in your personal life. It may be with your children. But think about, what is one thing that I will do in growth mindset? When will I do it? Under what circumstances? So have a little conversation with the person next to you. I'll give you about 5 minutes. All right. Yes, I have to use my authoritative doctor voice. All right. Thank you. And I would let you talk longer, but we're running out of time. And I do want a couple of people to share their if-then plans with us. So who would like to do that? Okay. Wait, just a second.
Okay, I'll go first. So for me, it's more a personal example. My husband's getting into a habit of fixing cars as a hobby, because when he retires, he wants to kind of transition from what he does into that. And he keeps buying these cars at the auction and trying to explain every detail. And I'm like, I don't need to know what part of the engine you are going to put in what way, because it's irrelevant. All I want to know is how much you're going to make out of this. So changing that fixed mindset and being more interested in something that I really don't care about, instead of And he just looks at me like, what? And I'm like, I don't need to know about the bolts. Like, so having more of an open mindset. So then later on when something does happen, I can
Okay, so
understand
you
why.
can appreciate the process more. All right, thank you.
I guess I'll go since we were partners. So my thought was just if I have a disagreement with someone, they maybe have a different opinion than what I have, then I will, just listen and dive more into more like she suggested, asking open-ended questions to kind of see where they're coming from. And we might end up agreeing on some points, and you see that they have good points. So just being open-minded about that.
Wow, let's give these ladies a really great example. All right, let's have just 2 more, and then we're going to move on. Anybody else want to share? All right. Okay, up here.
We were talking about, I don't know why that's making noise.
You good.
Okay, we were talking about when our teams meet and we're doing a check-in, we wanted to make sure to provide positive feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about the struggles. The struggles are great. Let's share those struggles. All right, very nice. Thank you. All right, so everyone will get a golden brain. There are the team that I work with is outside of the door. They have a golden brain for everyone, and it is for a couple of reasons. But first of all, to remind you of the flexibility of your brain. Your brain is changing every moment, so you can squeeze that brain and remember that. But the other thing is, and this is something very interesting from neuroscience, and especially if you have kids, you can help them. Turns out that our right hemisphere and left hemisphere are wired a little bit differently. And if you squeeze the ball, and a lot of professional athletes actually do this, if you squeeze the ball in your left hand, what hemisphere does it activate? Right hemisphere, yes. And so if you squeeze the ball in your left hand before creative endeavor, you can do it before creative endeavors, before competitions, and activities that require novel thinking. Because what it does is it kind of tamps down that left side of your brain, which is going to make you ruminate. Golfers often do this because they know how to golf, right? But it is the overthinking that gets to them. So if any of you are golfers, tennis players, bring your golden brain and share it with other people. If you have children before an exam, sometimes it's a really, really good thing to do. Now I'll open it up to questions. We have a...
Well, your last comment reminded me that this growth mindset and learning and wanting to learn is now promoted for aging in the aging population, and there are some clear health benefits. So could you speak to the health benefits of learning? I
can. Thank you. Great question. You already have a golden brain, didn't you?
No, I don't need one.
He needs one. Everybody needs a golden brain. I'll give you. No, you are exactly right. And there is research, and it's been, this is 50 years ago. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson Bridge grid, and it really shows you how challenging yourself, challenging your brain, because what you're doing is you're developing new neural pathways. And you're developing new neural pathways in a positive way. And so as you're developing those new neural pathways, you are also bathing your brain in very helpful neurochemicals. So you're bathing your brain in things like oxytocin. If you're doing it with other people that you know. But serotonin, all of those kinds of helpful neurochemicals. If you say, no, I'm not going to do that, and you're angry, or you are bathing your brain in things like cortisol. Cortisol actually kills neurons. It actually kills them. So you're doing that, you're actually exercising your brain. And I'll tell you, as I've gotten older, one of the things I'm doing now is I'm going to culinary school, which is really very different and very much harder than I thought. But it is that idea that you should be challenging yourself all, because our research indicates that you can change your brain. I mean, until you die. And you could be 100 years old, and your brain is going to change. Your brain is that plastic, which is something that we didn't know 20 years ago. So thank you very much for that question. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I guess with AI coming in and all that, like how do you see that impacting the brain?
That's an excellent question. Probably I am not even qualified to answer, but I'll take a stab at it. No, I think it depends on how you perceive AI. And I think it's really important to think about looking at AI from a growth mindset perspective, because I have been to a number of AI presentations lately, and it's the idea of what can it do for us? How can it help us get better? And I've also I had a friend who called me, I'm working with her on a grant, and she's like, do you know, I went to this AI presentation, AI is lying now, AI is doing this, and I went, can you do anything about that? And she goes, no. And I said, then don't worry about it, But I think I think growth mindset can help us navigate the difficulties and the opportunities that AI will give us. Well, that's a whole nother issue. It's a whole nother issue, yeah. That's way beyond growth mindset. All right, any other questions? All right, well, listen, thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Thank you for hanging with me. You were great. I know it's late. I know you feel like you've drunk from a fire hose. And I hope you join us for a little libation and snacks after this. So thank you very much, and good luck in your careers.